Sorry. Through the chair, the meeting is live now.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Rachel Rees toko ingoa, ko te koro mātua whakatū. Nā mā haere mai, welcome to this joint committee meeting of Tasman District Council and Nelson City Council. Our meeting is being live streamed and we are using a hybrid model today where we have some people on Zoom and we have representatives of Tasman District Council and officers in the Tasman District Council chambers. I'll start today with karakia, me inui tātou. Tuia ki runga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki roto, tuia ki waho, tuia te here tangata, ka ronga te pō, ka ronga te ao, haumi e, hui e, tai ki hei. Kia ora. Welcome to you all. I'll just run through a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to use the raise hand function on Zoom. And if you have questions, and the tick and cross function when you're voting. The chamber in Tasman is going to use the raise hand function for if there are questions, and then if you're in the chamber, if you can just identify who's talking, that would be great. For the voting, I'll need to come down to the chamber and ask Robin or Tim if you can just let me know who has near Tim, what your numbers are in the chamber as we go through. Please let the governance advisors know if you are leaving the meeting today. If you need to step out, just put out something in the chat function there so that they know to record you as having stepped out. So we make sure we maintain quorum and we've got good minutes. I know some of you are not in a position to use your video function today. That is fine. I know we've got people joining from a range of different places, and I welcome in consultants. Good to see you here. Our staff are on Zoom, staff from the chamber, and I just need to see, have we got on multiple screens, have we got potentially we might have legal advisors joining us today as well, but the officers will take us across to any legal information if they feel that it's necessary. If we need to take any legal advice, then we'll need to go into confidential. So just before I head to the apologies, do I have any questions on the procedural matters? It looks like we're all in order. Excellent. So now, do I have any apologies for today's meeting? I think we had an apology for lateness from Councillor Bowater.
Through the chair, that's correct.
All right, any other apologies? No, then I'll move that we accept Councillor Bowater's apology for lateness, with seconded by Councillor Ecker. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Order of business is as set out on your agenda. Are there any interests that need to be noted for today's meeting?
Mayor Rees, Councillor Bryant would like to speak.
Morena, Councillor Bryant.
Good morning, Rachel. Thank you. Just note again my interest in T108 at Spring Grove adjoining our property on two boundaries.
Thank you very much. We'll note that interest. There's no further interest. We don't have any public forum attendance today that I am aware of. So we'll move on to the minutes of the meeting of the 27th of July. Are there any corrections or changes that need to be made to those minutes? I'm not aware of any. Would somebody care to move that the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Courtney. They're a true and correct record. Do I have a seconder? Just give a show of hand will be fine.
Through the chair, I think Councillor McGurk raised his hand.
Oh, he did. Thank you. I missed that. Thank you, Mark. Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Councillor Courtney and Councillor McGurk. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. And Chambers and I as well.
All in favour.
Thank you very much. That is carried. We'll go on to the next item we need to address today, and that is the substantive report. I will hand now across to the officers and ask them to introduce the report. I think we're handing across possibly to Barry, but it could be Chris Pawson, so I'll leave it in your hands to sort out who's going to speak first. And if you have any other speakers, I just ask if you could introduce them and hand across. So, tēnā koe.
Good morning, I'll kick off. I've just got a very short introduction to give, and then a couple of corrections to make, and then yes, I'll introduce the, as you asked, the various people who may end up speaking depending on the questions that are asked. So, yeah, morning everyone. At the last joint committee meeting on the 27th of July, Jackie Deans gave a summary of the process we'd undertaken to get to today, or that meeting. So I won't go through in the same detail, but as a reminder, the process over the last 12 months has gone something like this. After a whole series of workshops with councils individually and the joint committee, the draft FDS was approved to go out for an SCP on the 8th of March this year. At the same meeting, the Joint Committee created the subcommittee to hear and deliberate on the FDS during the SCP process. The subcommittee held hearings over 3 days, starting on the 27th of April, and followed that up with deliberations on the 31st of May. The recommendations from the subcommittee were brought to the 27th of July Joint Committee, which was the last one, where they were considered and accepted for inclusion in the final FDS document. Over the last month, the FDS team of council staff and consultants has worked to make changes to the draft FDS to reflect the recommendations adopted by the Joint Committee at the last meeting. And this final draft FDS is what we bring to you today. You'll see that there is a track changes version of the draft FDS included as an attachment to the report. This is designed to allow you to see what changes have been made to reflect the committee's decisions and what resolution from the previous meeting each change is responding to. Some of the changes relate to the technical report. So if you don't see changes in the FDS document itself relating to a particular resolution, those changes will be in the technical report. So today you've been presented with a final draft FDS and the technical report for adoption. Alongside the FDS itself sits some online material, which includes an interactive map viewer that's going to be accessible from both councils' websites. Now, on that matter, just something to add there, as you'll appreciate with the what's been happening over the last week or two, our GIS resources have been diverted away from business as usual, and so there may be a small delay on the FDS GIS viewer being up and running, although we're still expecting that to occur by the 19th of September when everything's supposed to go live. So there's a couple of corrections that need to be made to the report. Due to an error in some glitch in Info Council, we're still not sure how this has happened. The description for each option in section 5 of the report, the descriptions are missing. Now, they should read option 1 is adopt the FDS as presented with this paper, and any minor edits or omissions are able to be made jointly by the council's mayors and chief executives. Option 2 is the Joint Committee requires further changes to the FDS and decides to adopt a revised FDS at a later date. And option 3 is require further changes to the FDS and adopt now, with the mayors and chief executives of both councils authorised to approve final amendments and give effect to the changes. And then the second thing that, the second correction is that in section 2.8, where it reads the 1st of December 2022, that should be the 19th of September 2022 to be consistent with the resolution. And just to give a little bit of background on that, that's really just to give us a little bit of time to make any final tweaks that could possibly come out of this meeting itself. Now, as far as people who are here to assist me and Barry, So we've got Barry in the chamber there. You can see the back of his head. And next to him is Maya Bengozi, who's been helping, involved right through the project. We have Ruth Evans from Barkers and Associates, and Cam Wallace, again from Barkers and Associates. Trying to look through who other stuff. I think I saw Drew Bryant here from TDC, who did the transport assessment side of things, the greenhouse gas emissions. Jeremy from TDC from the planning side, and Diana. Is that you, Diana Worthy as well? So yeah, so I think that's everyone, and I'll really hand it back to you, Madam Chair, for questions.
Thank you, Chris. I'll just go across to the Tasman Council Chamber.
Councillor Mayling.
I don't have a question at this stage, but I'm happy to move option 1. This process has gone on for many months. We've spent many hours discussing it, and this is the final day to actually put this through. And if you look at what's happened around the district, some of our newer subdivisions here have actually fared very well. And I remember spending last Saturday going around and looking at some of the retention ponds which had mitigated any flooding in Richmond. One is right behind my house. So I did watch it with interest, and it got within 2 foot of the top, but it was fine. So, because I've had a couple of emails in relation to people concerned about flooding with the developments. If they are planned properly and resourced properly, they work well. The ones that have caused us some heartache here were actually ones done in the 60s in this area. So that's something to remember going forward. And we actually need to do this. There is still a lot of pressure on housing, and we need this to go forward. And we also need, as I've raised before, to make sure that Nelson City does their plan change so that their intensification can take place. And I got an undertaking that will be here, will be presented to them in this month, but probably with the events of the last 2 weeks, it didn't get presented, and I can understand that. But I think that's very, very important. And when I walk around the district, people tell me we need more intensification, but a lot of people don't necessarily want to live in it. So that's about getting a culture change going forward. So I'm happy to move option 1, and I'll listen to the debate with interest. And I would urge you all to support it, because there's been just so much work, in particular from the staff. During the consultation phase, what they did was just amazing. I attended a number of the Zoom things at night, and the staff did a really, really good job. And I know the amount of work that went into it. And one of the ones who worked the hardest is actually away at the moment. She's got 8 weeks off or 6 weeks off. And Jackie Deans did a huge amount of work, late nights, early mornings, weekends. And I'm aware it was similar from other staff as well. So I just want to thank the staff for that. And I know this won't please everyone, but we have to provide for housing in our district. We need to do more intensification. That can only happen if we get all our ducks in a row. So this is a stage in that process. So with that, I'll listen to the rest of the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Mayling. Councillor McGurk had signalled to me that he was happy to second the recommendation for option 1. I'll just get Councillor McGurk to confirm that.
Yeah, just confirming that, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to second the recommendation, option 1.
Thank you. All right, it's been moved and seconded, but I'll now go back to the order of raised hands. And if the chamber has anything further, I'll just ask you to raise your hand again if there's anyone else that wishes to ask questions. I'll try and get the questions through, and then we'll move on to the debate. Councillor Brand is next, followed by Councillor Courtney, and then Councillor Eager.
Sorry, thank you through the Mayor. My question, it was interesting just to hear Councillor Mayling about his experience out there. So just with the recent events, and not taken away from all the hard work and all the time and energy that has been gone into this, in Nelson, with a lot of the land shifting and a lot of areas still under review from the geotechs to see once they settle, as long as we keep the sunshine. Does that have any impact on the areas that have been identified in this, of where we've landed so far?
Thank you. I'll go across to Chris.
So through the chair, a lot of what's occurred that you're seeing in the FDS areas, the greenfield areas in particular, is that's the pre-development landform that you're seeing that occur to. If anything, what that allows is for the developers and the landowners to have a lot more certainty in how much water they have to deal with, and where that's likely to flow, and which slopes they need to be particularly mindful of. So it's very much an engineering issue for them to be, like stormwater management and retention and secondary flow paths, all of that sort of thing is very much something that gets taken into account in the engineering design when it comes to before they go and develop any of these houses in place. So no, I don't see that there's been any issue or any need to remove any sites, for example, or modify them.
Okay, and then just my final, I suppose, question is sort of a common thread from the people that I've talked to in the community. Their concern was around if those areas were intensified or developed, that would then change the water escaping in an extreme event. I mean, water finds the quickest and shortest path to get to wherever it can go. So they were just having some concerns, having some of the land slide down through their properties and stuff like that, that the intensification area that's been identified, one of them, they're just concerned if it continues on to be intensified or developed, that would then create more pressure onto their property. So would that be addressed with the developers? Is that what you were just saying, Chris?
Through the chair, yes. The developers' engineering design would be required to take that into account, and the Nelson Tasman Land Development Manual has some quite strong wording around stormwater in particular.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brand. Moving on to Councillor Courtney. Morena.
Yeah. Thank you, Rena, and thank you, Mayor Rachel. Chris, thanks for your report. A couple of things. I'll try and wrap my questions into one, I think. You said you had submissions presented over 3 days. In your report, you make mention of 568, a large number of submissions. How many of those actually did in person present?
Oh, off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure. We can certainly come back to you with that. Ruth, do you happen to have that at your fingertips at all? Did that make it into the the technical report? Sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Look,
there's a huge amount of material. From off the top of my head, it was around 100 odd, but that is very much off the top of my head.
Yes, well, an aside to that, were you surprised by the number of submissions?
Through the chair, surprised, more pleased at the, I'd say pleasantly surprised at the level of engagement compared to, say, the previous FDS. The questions that we got and the understanding of the material had certainly moved along compared to previously. The general public seemed to have a much better grasp of it because it's been around for a bit longer and obviously been in the media a bit more as well.
Good. And just to wrap it up, Mayor Rachel, Chris, you will be stressing, I should imagine, with a capital S, the fact that there will be further opportunities for those that perhaps feel they might not have said all they wanted to say, or they didn't get their voice heard to the extent they would have wished, that there will be other opportunities to submit at other stages through this process. I'm thinking if and when sites are proposed for rezoning through changes and reviews and things like that of the council's resource management plans. So is that part of the communication out to the community as this goes forward?
Through the chair, yes, this is, as we're very clear in the FDS document, the FDS does not rezone land. It's putting forward areas that have potential for rezoning, and there is quite a process to go or to come between now and houses being developed on the sites.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Next speaker is Councillor Edgar.
Kia ora, morena, everyone. Yeah, so I sent through some minor typos, so I'm not going to repeat those here. Just a few questions. Section 7.1, agenda page 49. It mentions, so this is in the FDS itself. So second to last paragraph says that we'll be focusing on ways to encourage a greater uptake of intensification. I was just wondering if we should be mentioning the intensification action plans or the RMP changes that are proposed at that section, or if that's covered adequately elsewhere.
We can certainly look at that, and it's part of the implementation side of things, and I'm pretty sure we talk about it in some sense in that implementation. It is in the technical report, I think, but yeah, we can certainly take that into account and into consideration. And again, a lot of the stuff we're hoping we can cover off rather than cover them off right now and agree on exact wording that we can cover under Resolution 5, which allows the mayors and the chief executives to approve minor amendments.
Yeah, I think, look, I think all the points I'm going to raise would fall under the minor amendments, because it could just be, for example, intensification action plan, whatever. I'm not going to word it, but yeah, so just the context, all the comments I'm raising could fall under that minor amendments, but I just wanted to see if anyone had any allergic reactions to any of my suggested minor additions. My next one is section 8.3, page 19 of the FDS, page 59 of the agenda. And so that's the Richmond section. Again, just wondering if we should specifically note, picking up on submissions, in that second to last paragraph about Richmond, that we have that Queen Street / the Richmond Central Business Zone is included for intensification, because we'll see if we see in the map on page 62, that's now hashed as a residential infill area, and in the draft it wasn't. So it might be nice just to again add those couple of words so people know that we did pick that up, since that was noted. 8.5, page 24 of the FDS, page 64 of the agenda. It states that growth in Wakefield would likely need to be supported by further frequency enhancements to planned bus routes. Just a clarification, so do you mean further enhancements over and above those already approved in the 2021-31 regional public transport plan? Or does that mean, because to me that read like further again to what's already planned? Can someone clarify that for me, please?
Sorry, through the chair. Off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure on that one, but I think what it also depends on the level of development that occurs in Wakefield. So, you know, if we see the absolute maximum that we've planned for there, then, you know, obviously a higher level of or a higher frequency is always going to be better. And so looking at continued improvements over time, whether or not they sit within a regional land transport plan or a public transport plan, is always going to be a good thing. And you'd expect there to be regular review of that through asset management plans and the like.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. Page 68 of the agenda, section 9.5, page 28 of the FDS. This is about St Arnaud, and because there is the comment about providing for rural residential housing, I just wondered if it would be beneficial to note, because this was something that was again specifically raised in the hearings, that the provision of rural residential, this sort of highlights the difference in, you know, St Arnaud, for example, is the provision of rural residential is that it's considered more likely to attract permanent residents as opposed to supporting the development of more holiday homes. I thought that was a really interesting point, and just, yeah, I think that's beneficial because it's not just about providing, you know, just lifestyle blocks. It's actually more likely to provide, you know, housing for residents in the area. So again, I'll let that, if anyone has an allergic reaction, they can pop their hand up and say, but otherwise I'm happy for it to be picked up under the minor amendments. So 2 more to go with your indulgence, Madam Chair. Section 12, page 73 of the agenda, page 33 of the SDS. Oh, when it talks about stakeholder views, and it's probably, yeah, following up from Councillor Courtney, just wonder if we wanted to say in that section, number of submissions, how many people spoke or anything there, just probably, you know, because we did have so many. And my final one, section 15.2, page 42 of the FDS, page 82 of the agenda. Paragraph 2 mentions neighbourhood planning. But it seemed to be the only time that neighbourhood planning was actually mentioned in any real sort of substantive manner. And I'm just wondering if we need to be adding a little bit more on neighbourhood plans, either here or under section 15.3, what we will do. Because neighbourhood plans, I think, you know, because they're important for that community engagement at those next steps. Again, picking up on what Councillor Courtney said. And so, you know, I think for communities, they're quite important, those neighbourhood plans. But yeah, that was sort of the only time I really saw it mentioned. So I probably wouldn't mind some wording either picked up there or under 15.3, what we will do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Eager. Chris, is there anything you want to comment on in relation to the minor changes that are being raised by the Deputy Mayor?
I think they're all reasonably, you know, reasonably straightforward to incorporate some additional detail, and, you know, certainly take the point on things like, you know, the St Arnaud area, because that was quite a specific issue that was raised there that's very specific to St Arnaud. But I just wanted to, whether it was worth checking with Barry to see whether he wanted to add anything at all.
Thank you. I'll come across to the chamber to hear from Barry.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, look, I think they're really good points. They're all points that we can, of clarification that we can expand on. And there's nothing in there from certainly from a staff perspective that gives us any allergic reaction. So we're happy to take those on board. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, and with the chamber, there was a hand up there. I might just go back to the chamber for the next question.
Stuart Bryant's got a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for you. Just a question for Chris or Barry, just in relation to two things that's probably a bit more moving on than the current line of questioning. Barry, if we pass this today, when will it become operative? And I've already got people in the more outlying rural communities who are looking to do something on some of the land that's in here. They'll have a process to go through that. But once this is operative, I know this covers a 30-year time horizon, but can they start once it's operative down the consenting path if they so wish?
Yeah, through the chair. So the operative date for this FDS we're proposing is 19 September. So that would then replace the current 2019 FDS. And it is a high-level strategy, so it needs to be implemented through likely plan changes, infrastructure strategies, and potentially consent. So under the new National Policy Statement, new FDSs do have more legal weight, so they are a consideration through plan changes, through resource consent applications. So in relation to, say, a rural landowner that wants to do something in a site that was identified through the FDS, it would give it some leg up, but it's just additional weighting until we got to the point of implementing the FDS through a plan change. So that would take, that's part of the TEP review at the moment. A number of sites are being brought forward through the growth plan changes that we're notifying earlier this month. But longer term, we're probably looking about 3 years away for rural plan changes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll go back to the Zoom screen, and next speaker is Councillor Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through the chair. So I guess just in light of the recent flooding and slips and noting that some of the areas identified in the FDS for development are within flooding and instability overlays, by adopting the FDS as it stands, is there a risk that we're sending the wrong signals to the community that council affirms development in these kind of at-risk areas as appropriate?
Thank you. I'll come across to the officers. Thank you, Chris.
I think to have development occur or to cater for growth in Nelson and Tasman, wherever you put houses, there is risk. And we've seen that through, a lot of our existing development areas, some of them quite old, in areas where you would have thought that actually that's pretty low risk. It's very, having, just been through the process of looking for a house for myself, it's very unusual to find any property in Nelson where there is no risk of landslip or flooding or some other risk, a hail site or the like. And it's really about mitigating those risks through appropriate engineering design. And that's where, if anything, it's useful to have these events occur. If they are going to occur, they occur on an undeveloped piece of land where you can see where it's going to have an effect and how you might mitigate that. I want to pass off to Pat for further comment there. Rachel.
That's all right. I'm not sure if that was in relation to this answer. It was, okay. I thought that was quite a comprehensive answer you gave, Chris, but I'll come across to the Chief Executive.
Look, I just want to emphasise what Chris said, that basically what you've seen is a massive stress test of our symptoms, so that of our systems. And so anyone who's going to be designing a new subdivision on an area that has had some effect will now know exactly what they've got to design for. On the Maitai, we know that was somewhere between an 80 and 100-year flood, and we'll be comparing those rainfall figures, the debris lines, to just confirm just how big it was. But any designer in those undeveloped areas will now know exactly what they have to cope with. That was a massive event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Just to follow up, if I may.
Of course.
Thanks. So just to clarify that like an 80 and an 80 or 100 year event could actually occur next year again. It's just that that's the magnitude of the weather event, is my understanding. I mean, I think Westport had like 3 in 6 months or something.
Yes, but through the chair, because you don't, just because you have a 1 in 100 year event in 1 year, that doesn't remove the risk that it occurs in the next year.
Yeah. Thanks. So then I guess the only other thing is I just wanted to check that, is there a risk that this FDS could be out of step with the National Adaptation Plan, or that we are increasing risk to council, or I guess maybe worse to the community, by approving this FDS, which has development earmarked for at-risk areas?
Chris?
Sorry, through the chair. Again, I come back to the fact that if we are going to cater for growth, there needs to be some acceptance of some level of risk, and that engineering, the whole engineering design process, and that, we have quite a rigorous process between the FDS and houses being appearing on properties and roads being built and all of that. We are relying on that process to fill in that gap, if you like. But there has been some assessment, the higher level assessment, to look at whether or not it's suitable, the land itself is suitable to consider for those future steps.
Thank you. Chris, just in terms of the comment that we're promoting development in at-risk areas, can you just remind us how you work through that with the multi-criteria analysis?
Sure.
I think you've already, that was part of the processes we understood.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yeah. So we, as part of the multi-criteria analysis, land instability, so looking at all our instability overlays, and a lot of the greenfield areas in Nelson, for example, if they were on hillsides, they were scored down on the basis of if they fell within that land instability overlay. But that doesn't mean that it's a go no go criteria. That's just one of the many criteria, and it's land instability is one that has some pretty clear engineering solutions to. They it's something that's been worked with for centuries under pretty well understood engineering circumstances. But obviously extreme events, there are changes in that they need to be considered for future engineering works as well. And likewise with the inundation side of things, so flooding and coastal inundation.
Thank you, Chris. I'll go now to Councillor Hill.
Kia ora tātou, through you, Madam Mayor. This is it would be a hunch, Chris, because you can't do the assessment right now, but in terms of the multi-criteria assessment, is your hunch that if it was conducted today, in terms of those areas that have been hit very badly in Nelson, that are included in the FDS as areas for development, are you imagining that they would still have a similar sort of scoring? I know it's a bit of a fancy question, isn't it? But it interests me actually whether that assessment was conducted today, if it might score differently. I understand all the processes that are in place that will address, risk, and that we're going to trust those processes so that things, developments aren't built with the appropriate level of, design and mitigation.
Through the chair, I think yes, the scores may change just slightly in one or two of the criteria, but there would be minor changes that, instead of scoring out of 0 to 4, what may have been a 3 might drop to a 2. But that wouldn't be enough. My feeling is that would be there's no way that would be enough to knock an area out of where it, whether it should be included in the FDS itself. So, you know, from a ranking perspective, you know, a site may drop one place or something like that. We're not, I wouldn't be anticipating it to fall out entirely. No.
Thank you. And if I may, Chair, through you, just one further question. What are the ways in which this FDS restricts or constrains intensification?
Through the Chair, I'm not sure the FDS does restrict or constrain intensification. The recommendations in it contain, like if you look at the intensification areas, they cover almost all of the built urban environment that we have currently. The only areas they don't is where it's infeasible because, you know, they have recently developed areas where, say, the house on the property is worth too much, or for it to be financially feasible to remove, or things like that. So we are recommending that most of the built urban area is considered for intensification. It's I suppose, how liberal do you want to get with the next stages, you know, planning rules and stuff like that. That's where sort of the rubber will hit the road as far as how that's implemented.
Thank you. That's been my understanding. And one of the criticisms of the FDS is that it's constraining intensification, or that there should be a very different approach taken. So thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Well, we're back to the Tasman Chamber now.
Yes, through the Chair, just picking up on Councillor Hill's comment, the FDS makes assumptions around the level of intensification we're likely to see, but it's the resource management plans that will either constrain or enable it. So both councils will require plan changes to remove any blockages and potentially create incentives to enable more intensification. So it's really the next step. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. All right, no further questions. It's been moved and seconded. We'll now move into debate. Does anyone wish to debate today? And I'll be going 3-3 on the basis that we've been around this fairly solidly in the previous session. Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor, and through you. Yeah, of course, I seconded, and I will speak in support of the recommendation. It's important to remember that the FDS is a high-level strategic document. It's a spatial planning document, and there's probably something in the FDS that is not that some members around of the Joint Committee are not in complete agreement. Things that they perhaps don't like, but there are probably aspects in the FDS that they do like. So it probably indicates to me that the FDS is strikes a balance about the needs for dealing with anticipated growth in the district, and recognising that there are, you know, the comments before, there are risks and a changing environment out there, things like stormwater, slope stability, hail sites, seismic zones and things like that. They can be dealt with at the plan change stage or even at the consenting stage. This is just a spatial planning document about where we think growth should be taking place in the district. So I'd encourage all members of the Joint Committee to support it.
Thank you, Councillor McGurk. I'll go to the Tasman Council Chamber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rachel, it's Stuart here. Councillor Bryant. So you're like Councillor McGurk, I'd just like to speak in support of the FDS that we're considering today for final adoption. Having been on the subcommittee alongside Brian and yourself, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to thank everyone that's been involved in the process, from the elected members and all the staff. I think, as Brian said, we've got to a pretty good place, and I'm really pleased to see that there are some of the more rural outlying areas now have been incorporated into the strategy, and over time that will hopefully lead to more development and change, which those communities have been crying out for. And I guess it's a really good process, and I think, as Chris Pawson said earlier, the engagement from the public was very comprehensive, and we received some full and comprehensive submissions, which were well considered by not only the subcommittee, but also at the full committee stages. Consideration was given to the report back from that subcommittee, and pretty comprehensively, and I think both councils also ran a workshop. So I think it's been a very comprehensive process, and just all you at this stage, I urge you all to support the resolutions to adopt today. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bryant. Moving on to Mayor King.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Rees. Yeah, I also want to speak in support. There has been a huge amount of work put in, but I think the important thing is this is not the end. And because there's been so much effort, focus, and whether that's through the volume of submissions that we've received, the amount of, I guess, focus that it's had on it, the crucial thing is in itself, it actually doesn't get us any new houses or any new building or any new development. What happens next is the most crucial thing. So the plan changes, the implementation plan, because again, it's not just the plan changes, it's how easy we are to deal with. And particularly, I think this is important when it comes to intensification. Clearly, right throughout all the submissions, there has been a huge focus and desire for more intensification. Now, whether that's brownfields redevelopment or in greenfields developments, making a more efficient use of the land that is made available to get as many homes in there as possible, both of those are important. And I'm acutely aware that even now in areas where intensification is allowed or enabled or even supported through our planning documents in both Tasman and Nelson, it still isn't that easy to actually get through that process and get those developments done. So I really encourage both councils both to support the FDS, given the fact that these sort of documents are never going to please everybody. There's always a degree of compromise built into them, particularly in a multi-criteria analysis where different people's focus or support for different parts of that criteria vary a lot. For example, if you were going to go to the most hazard-free place, you might have gone and built some houses out in the Tasman redevelopment area. But because that scored much lower in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, transport, etc., it fell down the ranking. So that's always going to be a bit of a compromise process. But what we do from here and how we enable, support and encourage particularly intensification is really going to be the test of whether all the effort, energy from both the community, councils, councillors and council staff is actually going to be able to deliver homes and houses for people. So speaking in favour of the resolution, but really want to encourage those next steps to be taken place as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'm moving on to, that's 3 speakers for. I'll now call any speakers against. Councillor Sensen.
Kia ora, Madam Mayor. Thank you through the chair. So I am, or first of all, calling a division, and then reluctantly I will be voting against this today. I want to really acknowledge the extensive work of the staff and also to the community and, you know, the wider community and other stakeholders, Kāinga Ora, and I think we had one of the chairs of the IPCC come and present. So, you know, there has been really significant community engagement in this process. And on balance, I feel deeply uncomfortable about adopting this FDS. I know that the view is put forward that it's just a high-level spatial planning document and that you know, maybe for that reason it doesn't really carry weight, but having followed a plan change process pretty closely, there is a lot of reference to documents such as the FDS in those deliberations, and I am of the view that it does matter what we do today. These documents do matter, and if I am not comfortable that they are the right direction that we should be going in for the community, I just don't feel able to kind of, you know, look past that and vote to adopt it. So I think I probably don't need to say any more than that, other than that I don't think it really adequately addresses climate change mitigation or adaptation or risks. I don't think it adequately acknowledges the risks of developing in areas that are impacted by extreme weather events, and I don't think it adequately responds to environmental concerns. And I also think that it is likely to deter intensification by opening up so much or allowing so much, or signalling, I guess, that so much greenfield expansion is acceptable. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sensen. Now we're back to the Tasman District Council chamber, and I will be calling for the right of reply unless there is anyone who wishes to speak against. No speakers against. In that case, it would be the right of reply. Councillor Mayling.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Rachel. Just briefly, it is a high-level document, and there was a very good level of engagement, which is pleasing compared to last time. And over the weekend, I actually visited one of our reader sites where there were 6 townhouses built where there was one house. And it's a good example on Salisbury Road of intensification. And when they were being proposed, there was actually a bit of angst in the community, and I attended meetings with those people, and I visited them yesterday, and they're actually very happy with the development now, and having these 2-story townhouses next door, it hasn't caused them any concern. So that's an example of where people have had this fear of intensification, but when it actually happens, they find it doesn't affect them at all. And it's very good. So that was very pleasing to actually be able to talk to people who have experienced the intensification in a very small part, where we've now got 6 townhouses where there were 1 vet house, an old house, and it's worked well. So that's what we need more of. But as Mayor King said, it isn't necessarily always easy to do. So we need to make sure that we have good plans in place to make and enable that sort of work to happen. So I urge you all to support this. I already thank the staff and the other people that have worked on this. And this is one step in the process. We've got a lot more work to do to actually improve our housing and move forward in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mayling. Now, I was planning on calling for a division, so everyone's ready to do that, but a request was made by Councillor Sanson, but the officers are all ready to go on that, because I'd signalled that earlier. So we're going to go to the Tasman District Council chamber, and Robin will call the division, and then we'll go to Pat, and he's going to call the division for the Nelson Council. So Tasman Council will be called now, and then Nelson.
Councillor McKenzie.
4.
Councillor Tufnell.
4.
Councillor Dowler.
4.
Councillor Mayling.
4.
Councillor Bryant.
4.
Councillor Walker.
4.
Councillor Turley.
4.
Councillor Ogilvie.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Hill.
4.
Mayor King.
4.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now to Pat, if you could call the division for Nelson City Council, please.
So Councillor Bowater, I think, is an apology.
No, she's present, I think.
Lateness. I was an apology for lateness. So I am here.
Councillor Bowater.
4.
Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Courtney.
Aye.
Councillor Edgar,
4.
Councillor Fulton,
4.
Councillor Laurie,
No.
Councillor McGurk,
4.
Councillor Noonan,
4.
Councillor O'Neill Stevens,
No.
Councillor Rainey,
No.
Councillor Sanson,
No.
Councillor Skinner,
Yes.
Madam Mayor,
4. I think that may be 20 votes in favour and 4 against, but I'll get someone else to check my maths.
Mark, could you put the back up on the screen, please? It should show the totals.
Yeah, one moment, sorry. Could I just please confirm with the Tasman chamber? Councillor Bryant was 4. Councillor Tufnell?
Correct, they were both 4.
Thank you. And Councillor Turley?
4.
Thank you very much for confirming. I confirm the total is 22 for and 4 against.
Well, thank you. It's good someone else did the maths. I must have missed some going through. 22 for and 4 against, so that is carried. Thank you all very much for the work that has gone into this process. As the speakers have said, it has been a comprehensive process. I want to particularly thank the consultants and the officers who have put a lot of work into this. They've done some leading edge work around climate change, emissions reduction, and I was very impressed with that when that came through. But across the board, there's a robust basis now to move forward on the next processes. Understand that concludes the business today, and if that is the case, then I'll go to Mayor King for the closing karakia.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. Kia hiki te kōrero, kia wātea, kia mama te manawa o te tangata, kia u ke te ara mō tātou o ora nei, ko rongo ke runga, kia tina, hui e, tai ki e.
Tai ki e. Kia ora. Thank you everyone very much for your support and assistance with today's meeting, and we'll get back to our communities. I know you're all very, very busy out there at the moment and lots for us to do. So thank you for